He did everything right. Worked 38 years, saved, planned, counted down the days. And on his last day at work, his colleagues threw him a party, shook his hand, and told him he'd earned this. That was 6 weeks ago. And this morning, like every morning since, he sat down at the kitchen table at 8:47 a.m. with a cup of coffee that went cold an hour ago. And he thought the same thought he'd been thinking for 6 weeks. Is this it? Raymond had imagined retirement the way most people do. Slow mornings, travel, finally reading all those books. And some of that happened. But nobody told him about the other part, the part where you wake up on a Wednesday with absolutely nothing you have to do. And instead of feeling free, you feel invisible. Nobody told him that for 38 years, his identity had been quietly, completely built around one thing: what he did for a living. Take that away, even willingly, even joyfully, and something underneath shifts in a way nobody prepares you for. Here's what's actually happening and why it's so common it has a name. Psychologists call it retirement identity crisis. Studies suggest anywhere from a third to half of all retirees experience it in some form during that first year. It's not weakness, it's not ingratitude. It's what happens when four things disappear at the same moment. Four things that work had been quietly providing for decades without you ever noticing. Structure. For 38 years, work told Raymond when to wake up, where to be, and when the day was done. Retirement removed all three in a single morning. Identity. When someone asked who he was, the answer lived in what he did. Now that answer is gone, and he's never had to find a different one. Social connection. Most of his real friendships lived at the office. Retirement ended those relationships the same day it ended his career. Purpose. The feeling that today mattered, that someone needed him somewhere. Work provided that automatically. Retirement requires you to build it from scratch. And here's the part that catches most people completely off guard. Retirement doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like loss. And grieving something you chose, something you wanted, is one of the most confusing emotional experiences a person can have. Because you're supposed to be happy. Everyone keeps telling you you're supposed to be happy. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with retirement that almost nobody talks about publicly. It's not the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of not recognizing yourself. For most of their working lives, people organize their self-worth around contribution, around being needed, around mattering in a measurable way. And retirement, wonderful, well-earned retirement, quietly asks a question that takes most people years to answer. Who are you when you're not what you do? Raymond drove past his old office building 3 weeks after he retired. He told his wife it was on the way to the hardware store. It wasn't on the way to anything. He just needed to see it. He sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Then he drove home and didn't mention it to anyone for 6 months. The turning point for most people doesn't come from a book or a plan or a life coach. It comes from honesty. One evening, Raymond's wife asked him, gently, carefully, if he was okay. Not, are you enjoying retirement with the expectation of yes, but actually, are you okay? And for the first time since his last day of work, Raymond told the truth, that he missed it, that he felt useless some days, that the freedom he'd spent decades working toward felt, at least right now, more like emptiness than liberation. And his wife said something simple that shifted something in him. You spent 38 years building a career. Maybe give yourself more than 6 weeks to build whatever comes next. The first thing Raymond did, almost by accident, was name it. Not to his wife, not to his kids. Just in a cheap journal he bought at a drugstore on a Tuesday afternoon. He wrote 3 words. I feel useless. And something about writing it down made it smaller, more manageable, like a thing he was looking at instead of a thing that was swallowing him. The second thing was structure. Not a rigid schedule, he'd had enough of those, but anchors. 2 fixed points in the week that the rest of the day could hang on. A walk at 7 every morning. Thursdays at a woodworking class he found at the community center. Just 2 things. That was enough to start. He didn't join the woodworking class because he was passionate about woodworking. He joined because he needed somewhere to be on Thursdays with other people. That distinction matters more than it sounds. He wasn't looking for a hobby. He was looking for belonging. 2 mornings a week, he started volunteering at a local school, helping kids with math, the subject he'd spent 38 years using in his engineering career. He wasn't saving anyone, but he was needed somewhere. And needed, it turned out, was most of what he was missing. Raymond's year 2 looked nothing like year 1. The cold coffee was still there sometimes, but now it went cold because he got distracted by something he was working on, not because there was nothing to work on. He's not the same man who sat at that kitchen table in January with nowhere to go. But he's not a different man either. He's the same man, just finally introduced to himself outside of work. And it turns out, he's someone worth knowing. He told his wife recently that he thinks he finally understands what retirement actually is. It's not the end of a working life. It's the first chapter of something you have to write yourself. And for the first time in a long time, he's looking forward to finding out what happens next. If this is where you are right now, or someone you love is navigating that first disorienting year, know that what you're feeling is not unusual, and it is not permanent. The transition is real, the grief is real, and the other side of it is real too. Drop a comment and tell us where you are in your retirement journey. We read every single one.